It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Tuesday edition of the show. Thanks so much for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. Also, people out there listening on the RealAg Radio podcast. Well, it's Tuesday. No Tuesdays with Lindsay today. That's right. She'll be here tomorrow. We flip days this week. She is out and about this week on assignment. So I'm in here and I'm broadcasting today from Calgary. I'm in Calgary, Alberta, getting ready for the Big Grow Canada meeting. We've been talking about the past few weeks. I spent a lot of time early this morning prepping for this panel that I'm moderating. Tomorrow, we're talking about Farming 4.0 from a tech perspective. Probably, I kind of make fun of the title a little bit. You know, I'm never sure which 0.0 we are currently in, but we know that there is a lot of innovation and a lot of advancement that is underway. Our industry is changing immensely at the farm gate level and inside the value chain. And it's in some ways kind of really exciting. In other ways, it's very unnerving. And it can be kind of intimidating to a lot of us. Even if you're the biggest tech head in the world, you're kind of nervous about it, right? It's the unknown. It's change, and you're trying from a competitive standpoint. Whether you're, say, running an ag retail, or maybe it's a farm equipment dealership, or you're ranching or farming, you're trying to figure out what innovations are to your benefit, which ones are maybe disadvantages and set you back because it makes somebody actually more competitive than you and they have advantages over you. There's a lot of work here to kind of sort out. So really looking forward to moderating this panel tomorrow, talking about autonomy, electrification, how all this fits with sustainability. Of course, we're going to talk about artificial intelligence and all of that in a whole lot more. A 90-minute panel. And I don't know how we're going to squeeze it all in because I was working on the prep of all the different pillars and the verticals I want to cover here and try to dig into some of this, the meat of it. I don't think 90 minutes is going to be enough, but that's all they allocated. Sort of like this show. They give us an hour every day and we got to fit it all in. So it kind of comes with the territory of being the host of a radio show or the moderator of a panel. Should also mention that next week on Tuesday, going to be in Regina, Saskatchewan at the APAS annual general meeting. Looking forward to doing a live recording of this show there. We're going to be focused on the carbon tax and the impact the carbon tax has on our industry. Of course, we're in Saskatchewan, which is really, I would say, the heart of the anti-carbon tax movement. Saskatchewan has always been a very loud voice against the carbon tax. I have strong opinions on it too. APAS has asked we dedicate the whole entire show to focusing on the impact of the carbon tax. Of course, we'll see if maybe we'll see advancement on 234 today. That'll be something we can talk about next week. But here's what I would like you to do. If you have a feeling or a position and opinion on the impact of the carbon tax, whether that's on solving greenhouse gas emissions or being beneficial to environmental impacts, or how it's impacting your farm and maybe increasing your costs, or pros and negatives, I guess. If you have a position either way on any of these ideas around the carbon tax, I'd love to hear from you, okay? Because I want to have some listener feedback next week on the show if we can do that. It'd be great. Two ways to do that. On this and any other issue. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. Or, of course, you can call the RealAg feedback line, okay? This would be cool. If you could do the feedback line, then I could play some audio 855-776-6147. Today's show is brought to you by Nufarm, and they've got a new product. We're going to hear about that in a little bit here. Tyler Gullen will be on the show. Oxbow, a big product release. Nufarm is so excited about it, and they should be. You can find out more by going to nufarm.ca or talk to your local retailer. Nufarm, a longtime supporter of the show. We very much appreciate it. So check them out, nufarm.ca. We're going to hear today from Drew Spoelstra. He's the new president of the Ontario Federation of Agriculture. He's a veteran of this show. He's been a guest of the Farmer Rapid Fire in the past. Great. Drew's really a great guy. He'll do a great job. Peggy Breckveld, of course, stepping down from the top of the executive. So she's also been on this show quite a bit. So we're going to hear from Tyler Spoelstra today. We're also going to hear from John Tennant. Now, he is the founder of W2N2 Partnership. He does a lot of work in the global arena when it comes to trade. And John he's concerned. He's really concerned about Bill 282. And this is the legislation that, really started in the House, private members bill that started in the House and found its way now to the Senate. Senate getting a lot of attention. And John believes very strongly the Senate needs to be that sober second thought on Bill 282. This is the bill that would prevent Canada from negotiating away any supply management, market access going forward. The anti-noise crowd on this bill is becoming louder and louder and louder, even though it easily passed in the House, asking the Senate to be that sober second thought. Okay, and we'll also have time today for the top ag news stories of the day as well. Okay, so let's take a break, and when we come back, let's dig into this Bill 282 with John Tennant. He had a chance to talk to Lindsay Smith of Real Agriculture, and we'll do that when we come back. You're listening to RealAg Radio, brought to you today by Nufarm.
Picture this. You've just taken a photo that really celebrates agriculture and your community. Why not share it with the Lalman Hometown Roots Photo Contest for a chance to support your community with $5,000. Lalman is a family-owned company that supports growers with products like Lalfix Start Spherical Pulses and Lalfix Pro Yield Liquid Soybean. Visit LalmanHometownRoots.com for more information.
Peter Johnson at WheatPete, RealAgriculture.com. I'm the host of The Word, and I love doing The Word. I love the questions. I love the challenges. I love having to apply agronomics to all over the globe and areas outside of my normal jurisdiction. Also, I love the feedback the most, where growers challenge me, tell me about their plot results, help me to learn. The Word, absolutely the best part of my day.
What's next for your fields? At Pioneer, delivering industry-leading genetics drives everything we do. From the scientists in the lab to our local teams with boots on the ground. We are determined to get there first. Developing top-performing products, proven in more growing conditions than ever before. Pioneer. What's next happens here. Visit pioneer.com/Canada to learn more.
Welcome back to Real Ag Radio. I am Lindsay Smith, and joining me now is John Tennant. John, maybe introduce yourself to our audience. I feel like you're a man who wears many hats.
Well, I'm certainly prairie-born and proud of it, but I spent 39 years in Canada's diplomatic and foreign service, particularly involved in trade development, trade negotiations, access for Canadian suppliers abroad, improving Canada's international position is the bottom line. But as we're going to discuss, they were faced with a situation where measures are being brought forward, legislation which seems to us who've been in trade negotiations and trade development to be counterproductive to Canada's long-term trade interests, and we're seeking to register our disagreement with that and hope that the legislation will not ultimately succeed in the Senate.
Now, we are talking about Bill 282 or 282, and this is the bill that has been put forward that would limit potentially the future access to Canada's supply managed sectors. And John, you're part of a large group and a group with quite a history behind them of dealing in trade negotiations, as well as in, putting together international agreements in opposing Bill 282. So first, maybe let's start with who all has sort of come together to speak against this bill.
Well, we've got close to 18 signatories, 2 former ministers, one Liberal, Peter Mackay, and one Liberal, John Manley. We have many former senior trade negotiators, several former ambassadors to the GATT, Canadian ambassadors to the GATT, and deputy ministers of foreign affairs, trade, and agriculture, who are signatories to the letter and simply are offering their very best advice, as indeed they have over many years prior to leaving government.
Now, so there is a letter that has been sent to the Senate, to the senators there, essentially asking that this bill not move forward. And the signatories of this say that, in fact, Bill 282 could make supply management actually a further target in trade negotiations, which would be, in my mind, completely counter to those that are promoting this bill are saying. So how does that work, John?
Certainly, it's the feeling of those who've been in negotiating rooms that if you do something as extreme as this, that is enshrine in legislation, a sector or area, supply management, and say that it is not an area on which you are going to give anything in any future trade negotiation, it makes it a target. We believe that trading partners would even more determinedly than before set out to try and rectify. The bill simply cannot benefit Canada. I mean, to begin with, trade negotiations are something that involve a great deal of give and take. And having legislation that preempts supply management and the number of products that are associated with it is not the way to start a trade negotiation that involves give and take. In fact, as you've just mentioned, the view is that it could well single out supply management on the part of our trade partners in future negotiations, even more than may have been the case in the past. We have critical situations coming up, not least the renewal in 2.5 years, which needs to be unanimous on the part of Canada, the U.S. and Mexico, of the revised Canada, U.S., Mexico Free Trade Accord. We're engaged in negotiations with the U.K. Canada is seeking to expand its access in Southeast Asia. And if negotiators that are involved in all these situations need to go in saying our legislators have told us we can't simply possibly discuss supply management, this will be very counterproductive. And one would expect that our trading partners would use all the leverage that they could find. Imagine the renewal of the Canada-U.S. Mexico Free Trade Agreement, for example, in order to try and do away with something that just tries to start the negotiations in an inappropriate manner.
So with your history of, having spent your career in working in these spheres and on these trade and export and development and these sorts of things, I mean, do we ever go into a trade agreement thinking we're going to, let's try and deal away supply management? Like, I always feel like I'm under the impression that, yes, there are a lot of countries that would like access, but Canada, regardless of political stripe, has done a pretty good job of maintaining the integrity of supply management through several of these trade deals. I don't get the sense that Canada has ever been quick to want to deal it away. I guess from my perspective, it sort of makes me question why 282 sort of had to come to be for those that support it. From your history, do you feel that supply management would be severely threatened without this bill?
You're entirely right that previous trade negotiations have respected the importance of Canada's supply management system and the sectors that are involved with it. Yet at the same time, we've been able to gain access for a broad range of Canadian products, not least agriculture and other agriculture and food products. And as well, the intent of the government in any negotiation has been always quite clearly stated. And indeed, it's only last month or month before last in September that the current Agriculture Minister, Lawrence Macaulay, said, and I'm quoting, "We will always stand up for the supply management system, and we have delivered on our commitment to compensate hardworking producers and processors who've been impacted where there's been any issue in trade negotiations in the past." So the question is, are we not a country with a good track record of previous negotiations where we've been able to go in, give and take, come out, and still have protected Canada's supply management system?
So then, to set out where you would like to see this happen. Now, we certainly are seeing the Senate playing a significant role right now with Bill C-234 on the carbon tax side. This is a bill that, you have gone to the Senate to say, don't pass this bill. What do you see as a road forward to potentially stop this bill from moving forward? Do you foresee similar things, or just that the Senate would speak up against it?
The bill is, in fact, a private member's bill that originated in the House of Commons. And in the House of Commons, it attracted majority support, which moved it on to the Senate. So the Senate, which is often referred to as the body for sober second thought, is now in front of the Senate to deal with, either to pass it, which of course we think would be extremely ill-advised, or to not support it. Of course, any legislation requires the support of both the House of Commons and the Senate. Currently, it's in second reading in the Senate, and this is the time where people who have concern about this legislation should certainly have their voices heard, because the Senate will be voting on this. No one has set a particular date, but as it's already passed in second reading, it will move to committee and final reading soon. So it's time for voices to be raised, and that's why we have sent this open letter to senators urging them not to approve the bill.
All right, John, we'll leave it there. Certainly, this has been a bill that has brought up, many voices for, many voices against, and adding to it here, 18 signatories so far, and perhaps more. So thank you so much, John, for joining me on the show today. I really appreciate it.
I really appreciate it, and thank you very, very much. Pleasure to be with you.
That was John Tennant, founder of W2N2 Partnership, talking about his concerns regarding Bill 282 and what would be the ramifications of it if it does actually become legislation. What are some of the ramifications of it if it does happen? And I continue to hear more and more concern. People that are pushing for 282 or would be in support of it are relatively quiet. And we have asked numerous times for the DFC to talk about Bill 282. And they provide us with a statement. So we're definitely willing to discuss from a pro standpoint too. If for those parties that are willing to present that argument, what we are hearing is a lot of noise from groups on the exportable commodity side. And I think, and as kind of John alluded to there, it's a concern for other industries that are involved in future trade negotiations in terms of how they are potentially targeted, because we have said we are supporting, we will not negotiate whatsoever in regards to what's happening with supply management. All of this is leading, and you tie that discussion with John Tennant in what we heard last week from Jim Wiesmeyer, Pro Farmer. All of this, I feel, is coming to an apex when it comes to the NAFTA renegotiation in 2026, which still has a lot of unanswered questions in terms of what that looks like and how that goes and who the players are, of course, and all of that. So definitely something to be watching. We'll see how a lot of lobbying from a Senate perspective. You think about 234, you think about 282. Senate's hearing a lot right now from the agricultural industry. Okay, let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk to today's show sponsor, Nufarm. They got a new product that they are super excited about. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, brought to you by Nufarm.
CDC Endure is a new oat line from Alliance Seed. High yielding with excellent disease resistance and the quality end users ask for, all in one great oat variety. CDC Endure provides the high beta-glucan levels to make heart-healthy products like breakfast cereals. For more information on CDC Endure oats, as well as any other products from Alliance Seed, check out allianceseed.com or visit any Alliance Seed authorized retailers.
What were the issues in your fields this year? Did you do a soil sample? What is your soil sample telling you about some of the nutrient issues that you might be having going into next year? What herbicides did you use? What residues you might be concerned about? What weed issues did you have? What crop residues did you have? How well do you know your fields?
Get the answers to all the questions you have about your pulse crop at the Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio. I am Lindsay Smith, and it is time for a product spotlight. With me now, I've got Tyler Gullen. He's the Technical Services Manager, Western Prairies for Nufarm. Tyler, welcome here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, so you can't go far without having a discussion on resistant weeds, herbicide-resistant weeds in Western Canada, specifically kochia. What's the latest? What's the background on this?
Yeah, so herbicide resistance has really been expanding in Western Canada in recent years, and kochia has really been the poster child for this, as it's really seen a dramatic jump in both, the number of herbicide groups it's developed resistance to, as well as just, how widespread geographically those resistant populations have become. So, for example, you look at the most recent Ag Canada survey in Alberta, 100% of the populations are resistant to those group 2s, have been for quite a while. Now up to 78% are resistant to glyphosate, which was a really big jump, for this year of the survey. And the other big jump was the resistance to the group 4s, where 58% are now resistant to some, group 4, whether it's dicamba, fluroxapyr, something like that. So we're really quickly losing the herbicides that have been those workhorses for kochia control, in Western Canada, like that 2,4-D and dicamba. And that's really the case from Alberta, right across through Manitoba. And farmers really starting to struggle with kochia. So, Real Agri Studies did a survey this summer of over 600 farmers that showed, first, they have a really high degree of concern about the impact of weed resistance in general. And more of these 600 farmers flagged kochia as a major issue than any other weeds. And they've really said they're concerned that we're running out of solutions to manage those resistant weeds. So it's really getting to be a headache in Western Canada.
So how has Nufarm been working on solutions to help farmers navigate the kochia and greater herbicide resistance challenge?
Yeah, absolutely. So Nufarm's been working really hard on combating herbicide resistance for a long time. And something we did recently was thought, with so few new active ingredients coming out globally, let's go back to the old catalog of herbicides, throw everything we can, everything we know about it, resistant weeds, see if there's any lost herbicides that we really weren't taking full advantage of. And in doing so, we basically rediscovered a lost herbicide in the process that we coined diplomat. So diplomat is a group 4 herbicide active, a systemic good group 4 herbicide active we've known about it for literally decades, but it's only really been used in really low amounts and kind of some niche products to help synergize some other active ingredients, but was never really sprayed on its own. And what's interesting is that for whatever reason now, it is still controlling weeds that are resistant to the other group 4s. So we've done a ton of testing, and globally, I think we're up to about 8 weeds now where there's populations resistant to the other group 4s like 2,4-D and MCPA, but are still controlled by this diplomat molecule. So, I mean, that's really exciting on its own to me, but, the most exciting part for Western Canada is kochia is one of these 8 herbicide-resistant weeds that diplomat is still controlling. So, over the past few years, we've collected, I think we're over 450 data points now in Western Canada alone, just to figure out how we can kind of, best get this into the farmers' hands, help control the resistant weeds in their fields. And we've really seen fantastic weed control on the weed spectrum and problem weeds we have here in Western Canada, which is really exciting.
Now, what products are you bringing to market for 2024 that feature duplosan?
Yeah, so the first product coming out powered by duplosan is called Oxbow herbicide. And it's a cereal broadleaf herbicide from Nufarm, and it's registered and available for 2024. It's safe to use in spring wheats, durum, barley, and winter wheats. So Oxbow is a combination of that duplosan plus bromoxynil, which was really done on purpose. Bromoxynil is one of the last actives in Western Canada that's really still working on a lot of these resistant weeds like kochia. So we really want to make sure we have multiple effective modes of action in that one jug to delay the spread of resistance. So Oxbow herbicide, it's a really nice option to control, kochia we talked about, but also a lot of other problem weeds out there, Russian thistle, chickweed, lamb's quarters, and a lot of other ones in your cereal crops. So really excited to have Oxbow available in 2024 as that first launch of duplosan. We'll be launching a number of products in the coming years powered by that duplosan molecule, which is available exclusively from Nufarm to help combat herbicide-resistant weeds. And if you want more information on duplosan or Oxbow and how they can help manage resistant weeds in your field, you can always go to nufarm.ca/duplosan, that's DUPLOSAN, or give us a call at 1-800-868-5444.
All right, Tyler, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
And we'll be back with more RealAg Radio right after this. When it comes to your farm, you demand performance, because what goes in determines what comes out. At Pride Seeds, we deliver on performance. With best-in-class corn hybrid seed, you'll see results when it comes to premium yields in all the ways that matter. Moisture, nutrition, dollars per acre, and of course, tonnage. So discover your farm's advantage, the Pride Seeds advantage. Visit your local dealer or prideseeds.com today.
There's a reason we call it the Corn School. Videos on everything from planter setup, weed control, field trial results, yield strategies, and so much more. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com has the information and advice you need to help you succeed. Brought to you by Pride Seeds and BASF, Corn School episodes are available at cornschool.com, from RealAgriculture.com, or as a podcast from your favorite streaming service. Download the latest podcast today.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio, brought to you today by Nufarm. Encourage you to go to nufarm.ca. Let's now hear discussion that Bern Tobin had with Drew Spoelstra. Now, Drew's been a guest of the Farm Rapid Fire before. Well, he's also now the new president of the Ontario Federation of Agriculture, the UFA. Let's hear the discussion.
The Ontario Federation of Agriculture wrapped up its annual convention this week, and the farm lobby organization will move into 2024 with a new leader. He is Drew Spoelstra, who was elected president by the OFA's executive committee following the convention. He takes over from Peggy Bregfeld, who stepped down from the leadership position after serving 3 terms as president. He joins me now. Hi, Drew. Hey, congratulations on your election.
Thanks so much, and thanks for having me.
Now, Drew, you're a dairy farmer and cash crop farmer, from Binbrook, Ontario, and you're no stranger to OFA and farm policy and politics. You've been a member of the executive for 7 years. Tell us a little bit about your journey, from the farm to the presidency of OFA.
Yeah, that's right. So we have dairy farm and grain farm in Binbrook, and my wife and I also raise Clydesdale horses. We're a family-run operation, my parents and I and my wife. And so about 10 years ago, I jumped into the role of director, representing OFA members in Niagara, Hamilton, and Halton. And I've held that role since 2013. Been on the executive for the last 7, working with Presidents Keith Curry and Peggy Breckveld, and I've had a lot of learning experiences. It's been great to learn from the two of them, be mentored by the two of them. And obviously, being a general farm organization, we get to deal with a lot of different issues. And it's great to have that diverse experience and diverse farm background that I can bring to the table. And looking forward to working on a number of these things with a great team around me.
Now, Drew, as you look forward to 2024, what are the top issues you think the organization will have to tackle as the year unfolds? I'm assuming farmland preservation would be near the top of the list.
Yeah, certainly land use here in Ontario is a huge issue and one that we've been very active on over the course of the last few years. There's a lot of pressure on farmland out there. And it's great to see some of the recent changes that the government of Ontario has been making towards preserving more farmland, and we hope that we can continue those conversations and keep that momentum going. Certainly affordability on farms is one of the big concerns right now when we look at interest rates rising, cost of production rising, cost of inputs and everything else. That's something that we're keeping a close eye on and having conversations on all the time. I think another one is around the environment. There's, we're dealing with climate change impacts and things like that, and there's work going on in the Ministry of the Environment here around climate change assessments and things like that. So we're hoping to connect more closely with them. There's animal welfare cases, the PAWS Act here in Ontario that we continue to work closely with the Ministry of the Solicitor General on. And the list goes on, but those are some of the highlights and things that we'll be working on closely here in the next little while.
Now, provincially, Drew, how would you describe the relationship OFA and other provincial organizations have with the Ford government? I think it's fair to say there has been a bit of a disconnect on a number of issues, from the green belt and housing to the 3-lot severance issues. I mean, how do you deal with that pushing into 2024?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say that there's been a disconnect, but I think we're hopefully turning a page, and that we can reconnect with the government, continue to look to grow Ontario with their strategy going forward, and work with the ministry, OMAFRA, very closely. I'm looking forward to doing that with my team and with our other partners in agriculture. OFA can't do this alone. I can't do this alone. We need to work together to continue to advance our messaging and advance what's good for agriculture in Ontario going forward. So there's a lot of representation in the Ontario government across rural Ontario, and we look to work with our MPPs right across rural Ontario to get things done for farmers here in the province.
Hey, let's talk about some national issues, Drew. There's been a long tussle with the federal government on issues such as tariffs collected on Russian fertilizer imports. The carbon tax and Bill C-284. How does OFA make a difference here? And how important is it to work with and collaborate with other farm groups? And I guess the question is, can you get some traction with the Trudeau Liberals?
Well, I think so. We've been having conversations with MPs and government MPs, over the course of the last 3 or 4 years and longer before that. But we've been having conversations around C-234 and the impact that will have on farmers right across the country, but more specifically here in Ontario. We're hoping that gets put through the Senate, but it's still an uphill battle, I think, on C-234. We keep having conversations with them on affordability, like I said. That's a national issue for farmers right across the country. We still have that fertilizer tariff in place as well, and that's something that we'd like to see the tariff removed. It's still causing, an inflated fertilizer market for Canadian farmers, and that's a concern for us. So, when it comes to cost of production, we're doing everything we can to keep an eye on that and lobbying wherever we can to try and help farmers get that cost of production lower, and ultimately make farms across the country more profitable. That's what C-284 is going to do. That's what we'll do if we can, have some impact around the tariff. And then environmentally, there's, a number of issues dealing with the Ministry of the Environment federally as well that, they have their agenda, and we're looking to actively lobby to make it a smoother landing, I guess, for farmers here in Ontario and across the country when it comes to what the government's putting forward environmentally.
I wanted to get some thoughts from you on Peggy Breckfeld. You're a retiring president who led the organization through some challenging times, including the pandemic. You were vice president during those years. What can you tell me about Peggy as she steps away?
Yeah, Peggy's been a great leader for the organization. She's been a mentor for me and a friend. And it's really been a pleasure over the last 3 years to work with her and learn from her as she's led our OFA team. She's great at, building relationships and building networks for the organization. And I know that I can continue to count on her going forward if I need her. And she's got a number of other roles right across agriculture with the Canadian Agriculture Human Resources Council and some others. And we're looking forward to, continuing to have Peggy in the fold, even if she isn't a director anymore with OFA. We know she'll still be part of that family and continue to work for agriculture going forward.
Final question for you, Drew, and that is, about your new executive team. You're joined by Vice President Sarah Wood and Paul Vickers and Executive Member Ethan Wallace. What does this group bring to the table, and what are you expecting from them in 2024?
Yeah, I couldn't ask for a better team. My executive that I get to work with brings a real diverse cross-section of agriculture. They bring a lot to the table individually and as a group. I also want to say we've got a board of 18 that brings a real selection of what's going on in agriculture right across Ontario. I'm fortunate to work with all of them, and it'll take all of us to pull our weight and get the work done for the Ontario Federation of Agriculture and for the farmers of Ontario. So we're looking forward to an exciting year. There's lots of work to do, and hopefully we hit the ground running with a great team, and we move forward and get stuff done.
Well, Drew, hey, thank you for taking some time to speak to Real Agriculture. Hey, congratulations and good luck.
Appreciate it, Bernard. Thanks.
That was Real Agriculture's Bern Tobin talking to the new OFA president, Drew Spoelstra. A big congratulations as well to Peggy Breckfeld, who is the outgoing president, I should say, of the OFA. Always made herself available to talk about what some of the issues were, no matter, busy on the farm, as well as she's also the chair of CARC, the Canadian Agricultural Human Resource Council. So Peggy, very, very busy, and she always made time for us, so I do very, very much appreciate it, and I'm sure this is going to be, you serve on these boards, and it is a ton of commitment, and many of you have, doesn't matter if it's a general farm organization or a checkoff org, or maybe it's being on some of the national boards, which requires a whole nother level of travel. You think about Peggy, she lives in Thunder Bay, like that's a big time commitment from a travel perspective. And hey, if you're living in outside, maybe you're living in Peace River and you're on the Canola Council of Canada having to go to Winnipeg or Ottawa for some of those board meetings, that's a lot of time, and it's a lot of time away from your farm. I remember some data that are more like anecdotal. People had told me, like, when you were, say, president of the national body of some of the grower groups, I think of like the Canadian Seed Growers Association that I kind of grew up in because their family was heavily involved in the seed industry. It was an abnormal amount of days away from the farm for those people to go to all those regional meetings. Like there was a group that asked me, there's been a couple groups that have asked me about their district meetings in the West and Ontario, and when you're talking about like 8, 10, 12, 15 district meetings, presidents got to try to make it to a lot of those. It's a huge commitment. So, yeah, I really 2 thumbs up for people that step up to really lend their time to really assisting and helping out with the industry on some of these groups. It is sometimes I think there's not enough a bit of a pat on the back for those people. Okay, let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to get to the top ag news stories of the day. Of course, today's show is brought to you by Nufarm. You can find out more by going to nufarm.ca.
Canola is more than just a pretty face in the prairie landscape. It's a big business, both here and around the world, that requires you to be informed and up to date on everything it takes to grow a successful crop. The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com has an expert library of video resources covering markets, agronomy, and more to help you grow a healthy and profitable canola crop. Visit canolaschool.com today. Brought to you by BASF Canada and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
I get to spend every day talking to farmers in the ag industry through RealAgriculture.com and RealAg Radio. But nothing is more fun than speaking to an audience live and in person. If you're planning an ag event, book a Real Agriculture speaker to make it a successful and memorable experience. Email shaney@realagriculture.com and you can book myself or any other Real Ag personality to speak at your event. Bring your audience all the fun, insight, and energy of Real Agriculture. And welcome back to RealAg Radio, brought to you today by Nufarm. Make sure you go to nufarm.ca or talk to your local retailer about the great lineup of Nufarm products that are available to kill those troublesome weeds like kochia. Make sure you ask about the new product Oxbow as well. Nufarm, very excited about what it has to offer, as you heard earlier on the show from Tyler Gullen. Let's jump into the top ag news stories of the day. Lots happening, a huge assortment of stuff. We're expecting some discussion about Bill 234 again in the Senate here this week, actually today. And, I guess the narrative really hasn't changed. Some of the particulars have when it comes to some of the amendments. But ag groups still pushing the Senate very, very hard on what they would say, do the right thing. We've seen premiers step up. We've seen politicians federally from the other side of the aisle, like John Barlow, Shadow Minister for Agriculture for the Conservatives, really make a big deal of it in the House of Commons. It seems like it is like everybody circling around the government on this one, which is interesting because it's sitting in the Senate. But there's a lot of you can tell it's getting dirtier, or maybe just a little bit more transparent on what politics is really like. We heard in the House of Commons, Shadow Minister for Agriculture John Barlow for the Conservatives talk about how Environmental Minister Stephen Gilbert was rumored to have said if this bill passes, he quits. There's zero desire on the Liberal side of the aisle to actually give an exemption on this, even though there's a rest period. Like, this isn't forever. It's about a number of years. And I think the longer this goes on, the longer it shows there's just a lack of understanding as far as why farmers aren't against doing things that are right for the environment. There's just a burden of cost here that is unrealistic in regards to what the alternatives are, because in many cases there are no other alternatives. So this continues to be 234. Just seems ridiculous. Somebody asked me about this at Farm Management Canada because I took questions after we did the live recording of the show that you heard here last Wednesday, and I just said it's kind of BS. It's really a head shaker, the fact that this has gone on as long as it has. Interesting story in the Globe and Mail. Now, this is talking about overall business banking in the country, not particular to agriculture, but Canadian businesses rejected by banks are increasing, and people are turning to private lenders for financing as demand for capital outstrips supply in the traditional debt market. Business lending conditions have been tightening since late 2021 as banks have set aside more capital for potential losses. At the same time, business demand for loans has soared. Now, there's some data talking about for the 3-month period from July through September, it shows that debt insurance jumped nearly 2/3 year over year. The circumstances have created a historic opportunity for non-bank lenders, pension funds, credit unions, private debt funds to swoop in and capture a larger portion of a market traditionally dominated by the country's largest financial institutions. Now, U.S. bond giant Pacific Investment Management Company, PIMCO, they said in a report published on Monday that the current lending market may be the best environment for private credit investors since the global financial crisis. It's amazing. And so this is really the challenge of, and this happens, ebb and flow happens where when things are going really well and I don't need a lender, I that's when they want to lend money to me. And when I really need some money to get me through, I need to take on some debt, hard to find it. And it's in the middle. Obviously, it's kind of a utopia zone, I guess we'll say. But not surprised this is what is happening as some of the bank earnings. There's definitely been some concerns. Not to say the banks aren't making money, but there's definitely some concerns in terms of which direction the earnings and the margins potentially are going. And agriculture will be no different here as we see potentially a reshuffling of some of the ag books, right? Hey, this is a great industry to be in. And quickly we flip to, man, we got to reduce our exposure here. We don't want to be in hog production, for example, because of these reasons in this current risk environment. And of course, then farmers also dealing with some of the higher rates. The Canadian government talking about changing or putting out a new charter or something to that effect when it comes to, I guess, leaning on banks to do the right thing and make sure that Canadians' loan payments, especially around mortgages, don't get too high. That is kind of a weird sort of statement or an ask, I would say. In other news, McCain's is continuing its commitment to drive innovation and advance new technologies in agriculture. McCain Foods is proud to announce the launch of Presaria Ag Insights, a newly formed business unit wholly owned by McCain. The new business unit is a result of a decade of collaboration with digital technologies through its chain of operations. So what it's going to do is farmers and crop sourcing partners can better evaluate and predict crop yields, optimize harvest timing, and enhance on-farm sustainability practices. Brent crude futures dropped below $80 a barrel on Monday, continuing a recent decline. Investors are anticipating the OPEC Plus meeting scheduled for later in the week, with uncertainty about whether the group would decide to further reduce oil output in 2024. Now, Saudi Arabia has been urging other members of the OPEC Plus coalition to reduce their oil output quotas to stabilize global oil markets, according to Bloomberg. The OPEC Plus leader has been making a largely unilateral supply of cutback of 1 million barrels a day since July. However, some members are resisting this call for further reductions. The OPEC Plus policy meeting was delayed by 4 days due to a dispute over African quotas. Now, totally like a squirrel moment here. Do you see that the Live Tour, which is funded by Saudi Arabia, has offered Jon Rahm, the golfer, $600 million to join the tour? Crazy. How do you possibly? I'm trying to figure out the return of that. Jon Rahm's one of the best players in the world, if not the best. He's in the top 5 indeed. How do they get $600 million? And I guess the other thing is, how does someone like Jon Rahm refuse that kind of money? You can't even make anywhere near that when it comes to the PGA Tour. Money talks. And Saudi Arabia is essentially buying golf, just like they're trying to do in soccer as well. And it's a real disruption for sure to some of the global sports. And apparently they're trying to do the same thing in tennis, or going to do the same thing in tennis. Now, back to the energy prices. Gasoline prices in the U.S. have been on a 60-day consecutive decline, marking the longest downward streak in over a year. The average price per gallon is now $3.25, which is more than 60 cents lower than the peak in mid-September and about 30 cents cheaper than the same period last year. This drop in prices is beneficial for consumers as they have more money to spend during the holiday shopping season, which they did during Black Friday. They may be welcomed by President Joe Biden as he seeks to highlight the economy's resilience, low unemployment, and decreasing inflation ahead of his re-election campaign that is fast approaching. Although I would say probability is increasing, even with all of that, probability is increasing that I would maybe, I don't know what the money line is, but I would even bet we're going to see a different candidate. That's what I would bet, but obviously we'll see. Sticking with energy-related news, though, U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson said about Ukraine, because remember, there's a bit of a changing opinion in the U.S. when it comes to Ukraine aid, just like there is in Canada. What he said was, we can't allow Vladimir Putin to march through Europe, and we understand the necessity of assisting there. What we've said is that if there is to be additional assistance to Ukraine, which most members of Congress believe is important, we have to also work and change our own border policy. And so there's been a lot of thoughtful negotiation ongoing with that. Pretty clear message there from Speaker Johnson. If we're going to provide money to Ukraine, there's got to be more money going to the southern border. There's also... I'll say this. I don't understand at all this idea that there's a major issue with the North. Some candidates on the Republican side, Vivek being one of them, talking about how the northern border, as if it's almost like as big of a concern as the southern border. I'm not sure about that. Egg price fixing. So an Illinois jury ruled this week that several major egg producers conspired to limit the U.S. supply of eggs in order to raise prices in a case stemming from a federal lawsuit originally filed 12 years ago. Several large food manufacturing companies, I should say, including Kraft, the Kellogg Company, they were alleged in the lawsuit originally filed in 2011 that producers used various means to limit the U.S. domestic supply of eggs to increase the prices of eggs and egg products during the 2000s. The time frame of the conspiracy was an issue throughout the case. Jurors ultimately determined damages occurred between 2004 and 2008. USDA's trial allowing faster pork processing ends on November 30th. So USDA's Food Safety Inspection Service, this trial allowing select pork processing facilities to operate at an increased line speed expires at the end of this month. So an announcement is expected on the topic this week. According to a recent analysis conducted by the Republican staff of the Senate Ag Committee, approximately 40% of the U.S. hog supply is produced within a 1-mile radius of 6 specific processing plants in Illinois, Michigan, Minnesota, Nebraska, and Pennsylvania. 40% within 100 miles. That seems like a big number. On Thursday, the UN Climate Change Conference, COP28, begins in Dubai. This conference is important because among proponents, there is a growing urgency to address the irreversible damage caused by fossil fuel pollution. This is going to get a lot of attention. And I'll throw in sort of the shot there as everyone flies in on their private jets to deal. Yeah, there is some hypocrisy, no doubt, in all of this. Canada will be on site. President Joe Biden will not be. There's different members of the agricultural industry from Canada and the U.S. that will be in attendance. So, what are some of the things that are going to be discussed? Of course, they're going to be talking about meat consumption reduction. They're going to be talking about developing countries' livestock farming and some of the practices, and so how some of the developing countries, their underconsumption of meat contributes to nutritional challenges. So on one hand, they're trying to limit meat consumption in the first world, but identifying that maybe people in the third world need to eat more meat. Also, they're going to talk about the plan aims to address the environmental impact of meat production and consumption and cite changes needed both in nations with excessive meat consumption and those facing nutritional challenges. Yeah, at some point, those two things kind of do overlap. You would have to say indeed. Remember, if you do have any feedback at all on how the carbon tax impacts your agricultural operation, and you can tell me the positive impacts, the negative impacts, your feeling on it in general, you can send me an email on that or any number of issues by sending me an email at shaney@realagriculture.com. Or, of course, you can find us across all the different social media platforms. Make sure when you check out the Real Agriculture YouTube channel, make sure that you hit subscribe. You can also call the Real Ag feedback line, 855-776-6147. I want to thank Nufarm for being today's show sponsor, longtime supporter of Real Ag Radio and RealAgriculture.com. The team over there does a fantastic job. Make sure you go to newfarm.ca. Thanks, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with Real Ag Radio, and we will chat again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody.